Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Plant Yourself podcast. This is me walking around where I live in Spain and just kind of doing a little bit of a stream of consciousness, talking about some stuff that I've been thinking about. Partly because I've had a lot of people who've heard on the podcast that I have moved here and are very curious about it. You know, I did a bunch of in the woods episodes where it was just me sort of talking and thinking and rambling in the woods of my rural home in North Carolina. So this is obviously very different. I'm walking down the street where I live. And since I started recording, I have now reached the fruit and vegetable cellar, which, opens around 9 o'clock every morning, closes around 7 o'clock every evening, and is about 50 steps away from my home. So since this is the Plant Yourself podcast, and it's, the original theme was all about food, healthy plant-based food, I figure I could start there. And it's an amazing difference. We have a small kitchen with a small refrigerator and a small freezer. In North Carolina, we kind of got into prepping a little bit, and we live 20 minutes from anywhere. So if we went shopping, we bought a lot of stuff so we wouldn't have to go shopping every day. We actually had, a big suburban refrigerator freezer in the kitchen and then 2 chest freezers. So, we would kind of look at ourselves and, shake our heads like, why do we need 5 bags of frozen cherries from Costco? Well, what if, a hailstorm comes and takes out all the roads and the grid and everything? And so, we can keep things cold there, and we can, anyway, so we kept all our food was in our home. And here we have a very, we don't have room for it. So it feels like we're keeping our food in the grocery store until we need it, or here in the greengrocer. So I'm standing here looking at people are walking by and think I'm crazy because I'm talking to myself, but that's okay too. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So I'm looking at just as you walk past, there's fruit cups on ice. There's watermelon, there's pineapple and blueberries, and then looks like there's figs and three different kinds of peaches and mangoes and albaroc, which I think are apricots, maybe nectarines, avocados, cherries, and I think those are just sort of the local stuff. And they also sell some frozen stuff. We actually get tofu here. I'm looking at the jars, and here they don't have cans of beans and things. They're in glass jars, which obviously is not a BPA issue, so that's kind of fun. There's tomatoes, watermelon, bananas, either from the Canary Islands or Cameroon, and then all the veg. See broccoli. I came down this morning, got some mushrooms, and what looked like water spinach. Just threw that into a wrap for breakfast. So that's really fun. There's also a supermarket about a 5-6 minute walk up the hill. That's much more, supermarket-y with, aisles and frozen sections. So they have little bags of mixed frozen fruit, which we bought a 50 euro blender, which is not a Vitamix. I did a lot of research, and turns out the Vitamix was probably not going to work here, even if I got some giant $100 power converter. So one of the things that's been interesting is deciding what was important about my old life that doesn't seem to be that important now. And some of it was decision. Some of it is just you could get a Vitamix. They sell them on Amazon.es, the Spanish Amazon, for 700 euros. And euros are a little bit more than dollars at the moment. So a euro is about $1.10. So it's $750 for the same Vitamix that I got at Costco, refurbished for $2.99. Don't have an Instant Pot. We don't have enough counter space for all of the appliances. Our Breville oven, juicer and all these things. So, living simply has become kind of a virtue. We're cooking simple foods. We are doing sort of bowls, like acai type bowls, because they have really good acai places here, but it's 11, 12 euros for a single meal. And it's like, oh, for €1.45 I can make that myself with just these frozen fruits and some oat milk and a couple of bananas, and then just add whatever toppings I want. So that shift, when we first came here, we really didn't have much of a kitchen at all. So we were eating out a lot, and we were also saying, well, we're kind of feeling like we're on vacation and we're really tired. But now we're here, we live at this place, and we have an apartment that we've rented for a year. So moving into kind of, real life as opposed to this sort of travel experience. So where are we? I'm now walking. I walk down from my house, and you should be able to maybe hear the ocean in the background. I'm heading down to San Sebastian Beach. We don't live in Barcelona city. We live in Barcelona. I guess it's a municipality. It's the state is Catalunya. And for those of you who didn't know, like I really didn't know until I was almost ready to come here, they don't speak Spanish here as their primary language. It's Catalan, which is sort of like someone described to me as, it's like my daughter said, if Spanish and French moved to Portugal and had a love child, that's what this language is. So it's it's sort of French, like merci is thank you, but it's kind of spelled phonetically. So they don't have all the letters that are silent as in French, and the pronunciations, the sort of Portuguese remind English. So here I am at Playa San Sebastian, St. Sebastian's Beach. I would say there are about 300-400 people here. It's about a 200-meter long beach and maybe 30 meters wide from the promenade to the water edge at its deepest place. A lot of families here, maybe 150 people in the water, and then people sitting, tanning, beach umbrellas. Pretty much every beach in Spain that I've seen is topless, so that's something to get used to. There are fully nude beaches, there are gay beaches here. So I'm not in Barcelona city, I'm in a town called Sitges, which is spelled Sitges. And we are here through a confluence of events. One was, after living in rural North Carolina for 9 years, the jump to fully urban was a little bit too much for us. It was just, we loved, the excitement of the city and all things you could do, and the museums and the restaurants and the beach and the public transportation and a really good metro system and the architecture and the history and the culture and all the people and all that. But from, I think, a neurological perspective, it was just getting to be a bit too much. Plus, the place where we had our sort of Airbnb-ish type place for June and July happened to be a place called Barceloneta, which is the old town by the beach, and apparently it has become a sort of tourist hub for foreigners. So the locals aren't really crazy about the tourists, who tend to get drunk and be very, very loud. There were lots of sort of hanging banners over the balconies of apartments, asking people to be respectful and be quiet in the evening. And we actually had to sign something with our landlord saying that we would not make any noise from 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. But apparently we were the only people who had to sign that, or who, actually followed it, because there was a lot of noise, a lot of drinking, carousing. There are a bunch of festivals all over Spain all the time, and many of them involve marching bands and fireworks. And literally our first weekend in our new place was a 2-day non-stop marching band festival under our window. So after about a month of this, we kind of felt like we were going to go nuts if we didn't find a different place to live. So we were looking, we found, went online, found these websites, and we're looking at different neighborhoods in Barcelona, and we're looking sort of farther out from the main city, from where all the tourists are. And we weren't finding anything that looked even like remotely inspiring, like this is why we moved to Europe. The places were sort of small, uninspiring, kind of depressing, and we weren't really sure what we were going to do, based on our budget, because one of the things that's happened in the cities in Spain is the prices of real estate have gone way up, partly due to people like me coming with disposable American income, investors buying up property and trying to turn it into rentals and Airbnbs. So I couldn't be sort of too high and mighty about that, since I'm part of the wave that was the problem. But we weren't finding anything. And then our kids, who had moved to Barcelona in January, so 5.5 months before we arrived, and we're frankly the reason that we came here, they wanted to do a day trip to this town called Sitges, which is about 40 minutes south by a train on the coast. And we read about it and watched videos. It's a real interesting place. It's like a gay mecca. It's a very old town with sort of beautiful architecture. It reminds me of like a Greek island, sort of a very old whitewashed plaster walls. There's an outline of sort of deep purplish blue painted on the ground, just between the cobblestones of the street and pretty much every one of the buildings in the old town. I'm walking through the passage. There's a lot of wind right here, so the buildings, the architecture is kind of very narrow streets, tall buildings, which will give you a good breeze, which is important because now it's about 91 degrees and 70% humidity here. It's a hot August. I'm recording this on the 2nd of August. So now I'm walking along. I can see to my left, there's the Balearic Sea, which is a part of the Mediterranean. And then on the right is like an old church that's a museum, and there's a bunch of people here selling jewelry and tourist stuff and whistles, and so folks are sitting with their boom boxes playing their music. So we came here for the day, and the minute we stepped off the train, it was so much quieter. So the buildings were smaller. There was, it's a town. It's not a big city, and it was charming. And we both looked at each other and we said, "Oh, this feels really good." So we spent the day, went to the beach, there was like plenty of vegan food. It looked like this is sort of a place that was culturally compatible with what we were looking for. And so the next day we started looking for places here. I had talked to someone whom I was interested in becoming friends with, an author that I really like, and I noticed from the dust jacket of one of his latest books that he said he lives in Barcelona. So I had reached out and said, "Hey, I love your books. I'm not, a weird Kathy Bates stalker, but I would love to buy you a coffee and hear about Barcelona." And he mentioned that he lives actually in Sitges, in this town. So those things kind of came together in my mind to think, oh, this might be a good place to live. So here we are. We looked at a bunch of places. We have a small 2-bedroom apartment, again, with a small kitchen, as I mentioned. It is in the old city, which is great and terrible. It's great because it's so beautiful and charming, and like everything's nearby. I'm 5 minutes walk from the train station and the supermarket, 3 minutes from the beach. So now I'm walking along Playa Fragata, which is or Platja in Catalan, the Fragata beach, the frigate. So apparently there used to be a sort of an armada here of gunships that would protect the waterways into Barcelona, and so I can see the big holes in the wall where the frigates would be tied up, and there's a replica of a cannon on the wall where the cannons used to be, and I'm walking past a sort of a mooring area for a lot of sailboats. That was 2 bells. It's 4:30 in the afternoon from the old church. So if I'm nearby here in half an hour, you'll hear the full 5 bells tolling. So found this place, and here we are. We've been here since July 7th, so it's been a little over 3 weeks, and it does get very noisy at night still. So we decided, you know what, we have to get used to this. We're used to owls and birds and squirrels and cows lowing in the distance and coyotes howling sometimes, gunshots from hunters, but a lot of different noises. So our street gets cleaned roughly every day around 2 a.m. by a street sweeper. It's blowing some, dropping some water, and then the brushes. There's also every night from 8 until midnight they drop off the garbage and recycling bins, and then something comes and collects that in the middle of the night as well. We're also down the street about 100 yards from one of the most popular bars in the city, El Cable, the cable or the wire. And so there's a lot of people walking back up the street or heading back to their hotels or the train. I think this is true that Spanish or Catalan conversation is much louder on average than American. So very often I'm walking, I'm hearing people having conversations that kind of my nervous system tells me are like fierce arguments just from the volume and the intensity of the speech, but it's actually just friends talking to each other. So I don't know if you heard when I was standing in front of the greengrocer, there was a little bit of shouting. It was sort of 2 men who were very good friends. One of them snuck up on the other and gave him a little bit of a startle, and that's what that was about. I didn't comment then because I didn't want to be rude. So now I'm passing La Fregada beach, and I'm heading towards another much longer beach. It's also very family friendly. And so I guess the thing that has been most on my mind, so I'm feeling pretty untethered, like just existentially, like in life. Like we moved to have an adventure, to kind of get out of some ruts, to see what else was possible for us, to be with our kids, to, honestly, I wasn't crazy about where the politics and the culture of the U.S. and specifically North Carolina was going. I really wanted to live in a place where I didn't need a car and where public transportation would let me get wherever I wanted to go, kind of be more carbon friendly, and just to not have to drive and deal with that. I wanted to go to a place where guns were unusual. And all that's great. And like one of the principal feelings that I have all the time is just this deep, profound level of incompetence. Like I don't know how to get things done here. I am not a master of my environment. So in the States, I was kind of, I knew what to do. I knew how to do it. I knew how to deal with bureaucracy. I knew who to call for things. I had this basic level of existential competence. And here, I'm just learning Spanish for a whole bunch of reasons. I just didn't prioritize it, even in the months when I knew that we were coming here. And even though they speak Catalan, Spanish could kind of, certainly get me by. Like everybody seems to know Spanish, even though if it's like be a nicer thing for them to hear Catalan, which I hope to learn at some point. Spanish really was the priority. And I don't know it. I'm just, starting as a beginner. The other day we went to a laundromat to do our sheets and pillowcases and blanket and towels and stuff like that, and the machines only took €1 coins, so I had to go with a bunch of €2 coins and try to get change. And I practiced and like I was able to say the sentence, "Can we exchange these for €1 coins?" And I was so proud of myself. Like that's something a 2-year-old could do in their native country. So that's kind of the level at which I am not competent. So in some sense, it reminds me of the stories of my family of immigration to the U.S., of the children having to translate for the parents, which our kids are doing for us because their Spanish is far better than ours. But it's also making me think, sort of empathetically about people who adopt any sort of voluntary change that makes them incompetent. So whether it's, all right, I'm going to go plant-based. Oops, somebody. De nada. See, that was me saying de nada. I was walking here and there's a guy who's selling like giant balloons, like tigers and Hello Kitty and SpongeBob and Minions. He dropped one and it like skidded along the ground toward me, and I picked it up and he said gracias and I said de nada. Like that actually fills me with pride that I remembered the right words to say you're welcome. So I'm sure I'm going to get there, but I don't know to what extent I'm going to get there. Am I ever going to be competent? Am I always going to have an accent that people are going to have to strain to hear? I certainly don't have any way of appearing like wise, knowing, intelligent, clever, like I'm just a bumbling foreigner. Imagine someone coming to the U.S. who doesn't speak English. Of course, it's easier here because there are lots of tourists, and English is sort of a lingua franca, to use an ironic term. But, I think about what it's like for people to try to make these shifts. Now, I don't really have a choice at this point unless I want to leave and pull up and go back. And we've actually, invested quite a bit of energy and identity and money into at least this year. So I'm not going anywhere. We're gonna kind of deal with it and make it work. But like someone who wants to go plant-based or change how they exercise, do things they've never done before and they're not good at. I'm starting to think about in new ways about some of the rules that I've set up for myself, or some of the habits that I'm aspiring to remember, mindset habits that can support me actually growing in competence. When, honestly, I don't have to learn Spanish. I met up with a guy who's lived here for 25 years, someone that I sort of knew professionally. We had some conversations in 2006 when I was doing marketing, and he lives here, and we met up for a beer. And apparently, he says his Spanish isn't that great after 25 years. You can certainly, be a digital nomad, hang out with the expats, hire people, lawyers and accountants and fixers to deal with all your taxes and legal issues and residency and immigration. And you can kind of bubble yourself if you have the means and the money. I'm not interested in doing that. I didn't come here to live the, insulated digital nomad life. Now, the beach is right in front of me now, so more waves. And also I'm walking back, so the wind's at my back, so hopefully the wind noise won't be as annoying. I forgot about it, I do have a tiny little, I apologize to vegans, it's called a dead cat. It's the little furry sound muffler for the microphone that I'm using. But I forgot to put it on. But now it should be better because I'm walking with the wind in my back, looking up at the Garraf Mountains. So, what have I learned about dealing with the process of going from incompetence to hopefully competence? So, one thing is to really focus on the difference between signal and noise. Like, what's important for me to learn? And this becomes very clear when you're learning a language, right? Because there are certain words that you use all the time and certain words you use very rarely. So, for example, I'm playing ultimate frisbee once or twice a week, so I need to learn all the vocabulary related to ultimate frisbee so that I can stand on the line and understand what they're saying when they say, force wall or force sea. So, muro or mar. So I know which way to cover someone to defend, so that I can be part of that team. I've learned how to say foul, falta, and a lot of ultimate lingo is in English because it started in the U.S. And there's quite a few expat players here, but just getting those basics was more important than, let's say, how to order in a restaurant, especially because the restaurants where we have been catering to English-speaking tourists, and almost all have an English menu. But it's not just the verbs and the nouns and the adjectives and the syntax of language. It's also like, what do I want to get good at here? Mastering public transportation felt very important, whereas learning the city streets to drive was not. Certain lines were more important than others. When we were in Barceloneta, we could take the yellow line until they closed our nearby station, and we had to learn how to walk to a whole different line and different transfers. So, not being overwhelmed, because we have to learn everything. But understanding what are the things that we can learn the quickest that are going to give us the biggest positive impact. So I think that's a useful kind of rule, sort of an 80-20 principle to apply, and especially to think about it when things become overwhelming. Something else I'm dealing with is to not worry about what other people think of me, because I'm used to being seen as smart, and here I am not seen as smart, and no one has any reason to think of me as smart, and having to sort of let that go and to not care how I appear to other people, except when I do have to care how I appeal to other people, because I'm sort of doing something culturally inappropriate, whether it's the cultural differences here involve your tone of voice and speech. It also is a culture that has very different ideas of personal space and how close someone can be to you. And so there are things where I'm like, well, I'm not going to worry about how I act. I'm not going to worry about how other people perceive me, what they think of me. And there are areas where I do, where I have to think about how am I coming across and what am I inadvertently communicating. And in those cases, when I mess up, a sense of humor is essential. And a sense of humor doesn't mean being really funny. It means being humble enough to sort of smile and shrug and laugh at yourself and let other people in on the joke. That, oh, okay, this is how it goes. So Mia, my wife, is very good at that when she's sort of flirting with people, and she knows, ¿Qué tal? Buenos días. And then her knowledge just runs out. And at that point, she's like smiling and shrugging and saying, that's all I've got. And even doing, talking in English to say, I don't have any more Spanish. So, and that charms people. So, we're, building kind of a human connection there. One of the things that has been hardest from a food navigation perspective is the timing. So it's pretty easy for me to eat. It's extremely easy for me to eat vegan here. And now that we have a kitchen, it's very easy for me to eat healthy with the greengrocer, just 50 feet down the street, 50 yards down the street, and two different stores that are sort of like little Whole Foods or local natural food stores with sort of high-end stuff, so we can get our soy sauce or sesame oil or nutritional yeast or ground flax, all that stuff. what's been really hard is fitting into this culture around the timing of meals. So the big thing is people don't eat dinner until 10 o'clock at night. I'll walk around and I see, families, like you go out on a weeknight and there are families with toddlers playing at the playground at 11 o'clock p.m. They're sitting and eating 11:30, midnight. They're just, the party's just getting started. And there have been plenty of situations where I had to decide, no, I want to stop eating at 5 so that I can, fully digest. And it just didn't work from a fitting in perspective. And so it also, along with that 80-20, it's where do I want to compromise? Where is it important for me to be completely 100%? And where can I let go of some things? Is my 12 to 14 hour daily fasting window that important? Is it important at all? Is it important right now? Obviously we don't want to be eating 24/7, and it's a great way to gain weight to eat right before bed. And yet if I'm participating in a gathering, so that person that I had known professionally a while back invited me, hey, just sort of texted me, hey, want to grab a beer? That was on 9:30 at night. And I had to just well, first of all, I don't exactly know how to grab a beer. That's not the sort of thing that I typically do or have done. Anyway, I'm heading back, so I'm heading away from the ocean now, so I'm crossing the oceanfront street, and I'm heading up into a portion of the old city. So we should start hearing more and more sort of conversation, or I'll be passing areas of residents and shops. Right now I'm going to have to sneak past a car that actually I can't get through because the doors are open. That's how narrow the road is. It's a sort of Chevrolet sports car, and when the doors are open I actually can't pass without hitting them. So I'm going to head up a different street. But this idea of some things that I have thought were absolute rules for my life are less so. So even if I'm doing, when I would meditate, absolutely twice a day, I could always meditate in the evening before bed because it was 9 or 10. These days I'm rarely going to bed before 11:30 midnight. And honestly, I'm falling asleep. I say, I'm going to meditate now, and the next thing I know, it's 3 a.m. and the garbage truck woke me up. So, yeah, there's a way in which the environment is asking something different of me, and it's asking me a fundamental question, because it's really efficient to set up these rules and then not think about them anymore. Okay, I know that eating this way is good for me, having this for breakfast. I know that meditating at this time and this time is good for me. And once I've locked it in, I don't have to keep thinking about it. Here comes a motorcycle. I guess it's a scooter, smaller than a motorcycle. Once I've locked it in, I don't have to think about it again, except not thinking about it again means that situations can change, and I'm locked into a bunch of patterns that were optimal once, but may no longer be optimal. They may no longer be the most useful thing that I could be doing to optimize, not just, let's say, my fitness or my health, but really my whole life, and allowing me not just to be completely pure, but to also fit in with my new society. So this is all kind of the stuff that I'm thinking about, and I wouldn't say struggling with, but sometimes struggling with. So now I'm walking. This is the old city shopping district. There are fashion stores. There's a store selling sort of weird, fancy kitchen gadgets.
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Sì.
There's a bilingual conversation, passing a frozen dessert shop. Some of it's vegan, some of it isn't. Coffee and tea. Shoes. So it's August. So this is the month of big sales, and this is the month when everybody leaves the hot cities and tries to go somewhere cool. This year, cool is not exactly cool. It may go down to 80 at night, and that's after being in the 90s or hundreds in some of the inland cities like Madrid and some places that are farther south than Barcelona, near the North African coast. Here the weather's pretty good. We do have AC, and AC is discouraged. So the two things that are discouraged here are using energy and using water. There's a terrible drought, and apparently the municipal water supply of Barcelona is down in 20% range. They've turned off all the water at pretty much every beach. So the little showers for your feet to get the sand off, those are all off. I'm walking past a little Apple store right now. A 10% sale on Macs and iPads for back to school. Sunglasses, and this is coming up on the main shopping drag. It's wider. I'm in the square where, was it last weekend, I think, or 2 weekends ago, there was a little festival here, and there were a bunch of people making human towers. So if you're interested in that, you can just Google, Catalonia human towers, and you'll see examples. Also, when we walk around at night, last night we walked around and we saw groups practicing their singing and dancing and various acrobatic stuff. Apparently there's a festival coming up in about 3 weeks called Festa Mayor or Festa Major, the big festival here, and we were warned that we will not sleep for about 4 days due to all the noise, and that when the parade comes down our street, we need to cover our windows or else they're going to get damaged. It involves dragons shooting fireworks out of their mouths and tails, lots of musical instruments and singing and dancing and parades, the very large sort of puppetry and these towers, and so part of me really wants to be here for that and really enjoy it, and part of me wants to get the hell out of Dodge. What I heard from someone who lives here is that roughly there's a town of, I would say, about 3,000 permanent residents, and the 250,000 people descend on the city during this week, especially the two main days, the 23rd and the 24th. So I really want to see what that's like, and I really want to get out. And that's also a feeling like a very common dichotomy in my life right now is, how much of something can I tolerate, and how much, do I resist it? Because there's a lot of stuff here. There's people have dogs that just, they stay with them, but they're not on leashes, and not everybody picks up after them. And so there's lots of things that I can look at and say, well, this is suboptimal from my perspective, or even like I want to tell people off, like, you should not do this. And it feels very wrong to tell people off in not their own language. Like, I really don't have the credibility or the right to interject my thoughts into their culture here, even though this is gross, this is wrong, this could be so much better done some other way. I have all that. And then there's also just letting go. I don't have control over stuff, and I don't know better than the people who've had this culture going for hundreds and hundreds of years. And this isn't just a short experiment in what culture looks like. This is something that has sort of organic staying power. And so being able to just go with the flow and say, okay, so this 4-day festival I will figure it out. And if I want to live here, I could probably pick and choose. I probably could go and, go on hotels.com or Airbnb and like escape. And, maybe push comes to shove, I'll do it. But I also want to be someone who can live here. So North Carolina, where we lived, wasn't perfect. I just got used to the things that weren't. And some of them were pretty profoundly imperfect. Like I really didn't have a community. I was 20 minutes away by car from just about any commercial center where you'd see people. It wasn't just sort of, we had 3 or 4 neighbors on our road that we were friendly with, but everybody's busy all the time, so you don't get to see them all that much. There was a way in which I was profoundly lacking in community where I lived, but I made do with that. And here I have this opportunity to grow community. I bought a cheap violin in the town just south of us on the train line, Villanova Ilagel, so that I could, reach out to people in local Facebook groups and who do some music. So I might do some jazz or folk or rock fiddling with people just to meet people. And I don't have to go anywhere, and people are everywhere. Like as I'm walking now, there's just dozens of people everywhere I turn. And so, just because I had become very comfortable doesn't mean that it was optimal. And here, there's no such thing as, perfection. I don't get to have a full, rich community where everyone is as quiet as I want them to be all the time, and nobody lets their dog do messes. So everything is some kind of a balancing act. So I'm heading back now towards the top of my street. So I've taken us on a loop. I don't know if the wind has stopped or whether it was just blowing by the ocean, and so I don't really feel it now. So I'm hoping that it's not bothering the microphone. But now, I'm at the top of the street, so I have another maybe 100 yards to go until I get back to my door, when I'm going to switch this off. So if I see anyone in the lobby of my apartment building, they don't hear me just babbling onto myself in English. Anyway, I hope this is for people who care about what I'm up to. I hope this has given you some sort of insights. If you liked it, I can do more. It's fun to walk around. Plus, I get steps. Steps is another thing. Like when we were in Barcelona, living in Barcelona, it was hard not to get 20,000 steps a day if you stepped outside, because there's always stuff to do and places to go. And the subway stops are so close together. The metro stops, it was almost like, well, I could take the metro, but I could just walk to the next stop. Here, it's a smaller place, and they do have pretty good. There's 3 bus routes. So if I do want to go to the bigger supermarket area, it's not a beautiful walk. It's through, sort of hills and hoity-toity residential apartment buildings, and then it turns into a kind of a semi-sort of industrial area where they can put up big supermarkets that are cheaper per square foot, and they also have warehouses and big car washes and storage units. There's a bus for that. So it's harder to get steps here. So I actually have been using an app to kind of incentivize me to take more steps. What I'm going to do before I go back into the apartment, I'm going to head down to the greengrocer and I'll pick up some fresh berries. I think I'm going to get a little packet of blueberries and raspberries, and then I'm going to slice some bananas, and then Mia and I are going to have a late afternoon snack before we decide what we're going to do for late dinner. So again, thank you for being a listener. If you have any requests or anything you want me to talk about, I do have a lot more interviews coming up. I'm kind of back in the swing of things and really enjoying it. And if there's people, man on the street or woman on the street interviews you want me to do here, if you want to find out more about my life, just let me know. You can reach me on Facebook or hj@plantyourself.com, or however else people find me. And that's it for this walking tour of Sitges, Spain. So as always, be well, my friends.